Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, federal government to consolidate criminal charges against former National Security Advisor barely 24 hours after ECOWAS court orders his release. Code of Conduct Tribunal chairman turns down Dr. Bukola Saraki's application that he disqualify himself from hearing the Senate President's non-declaration of assets case. As Nigeria marks the World Teachers' Day, National Union of Teachers issues government a 2-week ultimatum to pay teachers outstanding entitlements or face strike. And more than 20 migrants suffocate in the hold of overloaded fishing boats on the Mediterranean.
On Business News tonight, the British High Commissioner to Nigeria has asked the federal government to up its game in order to attract foreign investment into the country.
And on Sports News tonight, 2016 Paralympics silver medalist Latifa Tijani gets mouth-watering rewards from the Ogun State government.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, I'm Ibrahim Adra. Senate throws out bill seeking provision of special grants to Lagos State.
We begin tonight in the Federal Capital Territory, where the government has agreed to consolidate the criminal charges filed against the former National Security Advisor, retired Colonel Sambo Dasuki. Counsel to the former NSA, Mr. Joseph Daudu, says putting him on trial in 2 different courts on the same issue would prejudice and cause him double jeopardy. Dasuki had been put on trial before Justice Baba Yusuf, and another charge was filed against him before Justice Peter Affen, both of the FCT High Court. During today's proceedings, Justice Baba Yusuf adjourned the case to October 21, 2016. This follows the Economic Community of West African States court ruling, which describes his continuous detention as unlawful and a gross violation of his fundamental human rights. The chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal has dismissed the application by the Senate President seeking his disqualification from hearing the case of non-declaration of assets. Dr. Bukola Saraki claims Mr. Danladi Umar may be biased. Speaking today, Mr. Umar said the provisions of the Code of Conduct Tribunal have not conferred on any court the right to adjudicate or over cases of abuse of public office and non-declaration of assets. Our correspondent, Amaka Okafo, reports.
After 3 months of recess, the Senate President, in the company of lawmakers and supporters, makes his way into the Code of Conduct Tribunal for the continuation of his trial on allegations of abuse of office and non-declaration of assets. His arrival elicits cheers from his supporters. He takes his time to exchange pleasantries with his legal team, after which his supporters enthusiastically exchanged pleasantries with him. At the last sitting of the tribunal on the 8th of July, the Senate President had filed an application accusing the chairman of the tribunal of bias, following the statement he made on the 7th of July that the defendant must face the consequences of his trial, no matter how much he delays the proceedings. In the motion argued by his lawyer, Paul Erukoro, the Senate President had said the statement was prejudicial and he is not confident of a fair trial from the tribunal. However, in his ruling, the chairman of the tribunal first apologized for the comments made on the 7th of July, but declined to disqualify himself from participating in the trial on the grounds of the comment. According to him, as human beings, we are bound to make mistakes, and it is only the Almighty God that is infallible. He then expressed surprise that since the alleged comment was made, no one had taken the time to verify the said comment and that his statements were misconstrued, because the alleged comment was not intended to prejudice the defendant. He added that he would have excused himself from the case, but is constrained by the provisions of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, which had not been conferred on any court to adjudicate any case of abuse of public office and non-declaration of assets. He also also states that as chairman of the tribunal, he can only be removed where he has reached retirement age or via an address by the president to the National Assembly. Other than that, there is nothing the National Assembly can do to remove the chairman of the tribunal. He concluded that the allegations of bias in the instant case is based on hearsay and not verifiable facts. He therefore threw out the application for lack of merit. Parties in the suit react to the ruling.
It's a decision of the tribunal, and we'll look at it and take a decision on the next step.
The court has made its point again that they cannot just bring an application that the case should be thrown out or that the court should recuse itself.
The tribunal has adjourned to the 7th of November 2016 for continuation of hearing. Amaka Okafor, Channels Television News.
Away from the lawmakers, as Nigeria joins the rest of the world to mark the World Teachers' Day, the National Union of Teachers has given the government a 2-week ultimatum to meet their demands or face a nationwide strike. Over 80% of state governments in the country are owing teachers' salaries, with some states owing up to 9 months.
Across the country, issues of poor welfare, non-payment of salaries and lack of training are some of the issues teachers have had to contend with. The effect of the downturn in the nation's economy has also made their plight worse, as their hopes of receiving salaries at the end of the month is being dashed. One of the issues raised at this year's World Teachers' Day is ensuring that the welfare of teachers is made a top priority by the government.
If in 2 weeks' time we meet and nothing positive has happened, do not wait for any other directive. We will call Nigerian teachers out on strike.
How can a teacher deserve 20,000 naira salary? You are giving the teacher 8,000 naira. You expect the teacher to come very happy tomorrow to come and work. The teacher has family to cater for.
Besides, teachers want support for families of about 600 teachers who lost their lives to insurgency in Borno State.
We are considering also to have a platform where some of these workers can be assisted. We will try to launch a platform because the situation of their family, especially those teachers, is something that is so pathetic.
While offering a hand of support to assist government in building capacities of teachers in the country, an official of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization advocates adequate remuneration of teachers.
Many teachers still work with inadequate contracts and pay. They often live in difficult conditions and lack appropriate initial training, continuous professional development, and consistent support. They are sometimes victims of discrimination and even violent attacks.
For now, the nation's teachers can only hope for better days ahead. They want governments at the state level to always put the welfare of teachers on the front burner.
There was a similar sentiment in other parts of the country, with several complaints bordering on teachers' welfare. In this next report, our correspondent Aroluwa looks at the mood in some states with teachers and what the authorities have planned for them.
The all too familiar sights of protests in Nigeria. It's either doctors, petroleum workers, or another group upset with the government over agreements. So every time the World Teachers' Day turns up on the calendar, those who are vessels of knowledge embrace it with unfulfilled hopes. But is that the case? Apart from the chance of solidarity, the ceremonies in most states this year are low-keyed. Reasons for this is that most of their aspirations are yet to be met, and they're still on the same subjects.
It is pertinent to note at this point that there are other issues which seem to pose a serious threat to the educational development of the state in recent times.
Challenges we're having is the National Assembly, because I don't see the reason why they will approve 65 for lecturer in the Polytechnic, in the College of Education, and not approve our own. We build these people.
what we request for that is very ultimate is, of course, the review of our salary structure to commemorate with the status of teaching as a professional organization.
Every time the teachers lay their issues on the table, the government appears to have ready-made messages to calm their frayed nerves.
Powerful message I want to give to them is that they should know that they are the pillars of support for our children in developing them. And whatever input we get from teachers will tell on these children in future.
Given by the grace of God, the next 1 year, by the time we come back here, next year, by the grace of God, all of us, I am sure the number of requests from the chairman of NUT will not be more than 1 or 2.
Educators are invaluable pieces in the jigsaw of life, and therefore should not be made to suffer for their wages. And these teachers can only hope that the government lives up to its word soon. Otherwise, it's raised placards and shouts of complaints next year. The all too familiar sight. Orelu Ashonibare, Channels Television News.
I have with me in the studio Chief Executive Officer of EduMac Consults and also initiator Concerned Parents and Educators Network, Mrs. Yinka Ogunde. Thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me here.
Well, you heard that report, the major complaint for teachers, remuneration as well as training. How can this be resolved?
Basically, I believe that those issues are very, very fundamental. They are critical and they can determine the quality of teachers that we have or that we are going to have as a country. Take the issue of teachers training, for example. We actually need to revisit that issue. We need to go down to the basics. How are these teachers trained? How do we attract personnel into our workforce, into the teaching force? If we don't look at all these issues, then if we're talking about teachers' welfare and where they are, the poor quality of teachers, then we haven't started. I would want to suggest that we go back to where we train our teachers and the kind of people that we are training. How do we train them? The teachers training colleges. What are we actually doing there? I think that is very, very critical because the quality of teachers that we are now having, that's the major complaint. That, oh yes, there's very low quality of teachers that we have. How do we redress that?
I remember in a conversation with you, you mentioned that there are teachers in classrooms who don't have a passion for what they do, and that's really important for any teacher who needs to be in the classroom.
I believe that's extremely important. That's why I talked about the kind of people that we are attracting into the workforce. You will see that sometimes the kind of people that will come in are people that have tried other things and maybe it didn't work out and then they end up being teachers. We need people who are passionate about teaching. We need people who really understand what it is to be a teacher. We need people who really from the first instant desire to be teachers because it's a very long haul. They're not just going to be there for 1 year or 2 years. And we are putting into their hands the major asset of this nation. And that is our children, our major asset. We are giving it to them. Who are those people that we are giving the critical asset of this nation? Who are they that we're giving them?
But why are teachers most oftentimes ignored? Why? Because you just talked about us placing in their hands our most valuable assets, which are our children. So why are they still ignored? Why don't we value them as we should?
I believe that is why we need to redesign our perception about education in this country. We need to understand that if you decide to be a teacher, it's a prestigious profession. You are in charge of shaping the future generation. We are putting in your hands what is going to be the Nigeria of tomorrow. But what do we have? you actually have if somebody that is extremely intelligent says, I want to be a teacher, and I remember the case of a small child.
I would love for you to hold that thought.
Okay.
We'll take a quick break. In part 2, after the break, we'll continue our conversation with Mrs. Ogunde, and communities along the Ogun River bank count their losses as the river once again bursts its banks. Please join us again.